Meanwhile, as Israel and Gaza trade blows, international equivocations and condemnations against Israel are seemingly growing. Some in the Arab world, like in Jordan, even calling for the elimination of peace agreements with Israel. But here with more on Zoom, political and peace activist Moshe Chertoff, and in studio, CEO of Honest Reporting, Daniel Pomerantz. Daniel, I'll start with you. What do you make of the latest escalations and additionally the international community's response to them?
The international community has responded at best with concern and worry about Israel's actions, and at worst with outright condemnation. The White House has expressed concern. The UN Security Council is trying to push through a resolution condemning Israel. Generally, the narrative around the world, and it's a word that I hate, but it's come to characterize news. It's not about what happened, it's about the story you want to tell. The narrative that has characterized most of the world is that Israel began this by attacking Muslims at Ramadan prayers, and Hamas responded to those attacks by firing rockets, and then Israel in turn responded by killing children.
All right. Well, Moshe, how would you characterize the framing of this conflict and especially the context and the supposed Palestinian motivations?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me here, and hello to Daniel also. I want to start off by thanking and complimenting our soldiers in the IDF and their defense capabilities in protecting all of our residents in Israel. It's very important, and my heart is with all of those who are running to shelters. And yes, also with the peaceful civilians of Gaza. They're suffering no less.
Absolutely.
So far with 2 killed today, and that's two too many in Israel. And with over 25 dead actually by now in Gaza and hundreds of injured there. It doesn't matter what the numbers will be. And I hope the numbers remain where they are and don't increase. But this is not a matter of, it's not a contest. It's
Absolutely.
It's not like we're going to be convinced and just leave Palestine, or they're just going to be convinced and leave Israel. That's not going to happen. So the situation as I see it, it is or was predictable, it was preventable, it is pointless, and it's actually a hopeless war because I can't see anything really good coming out of it. If we may demand that Hamas do some actual reasonable assessment of their possible achievements, should they be doing soul searching to try to possibly come to the conclusion of, well, maybe we shouldn't be firing missiles into civilian populations, then shouldn't we also be doing soul searching about our responses and possibly holding back a bit and trying to open up another channel for solving the conflict, the current state of the conflict. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I participated in a march called the March of Flowers with an organization that I belong to called the Tag Meir Forum. We marched through the old city and into the village of Silwan and handed out flowers to Jews and Arabs, to everyone who was passing, trying to promote free love, not in the hippie sense, but free love as opposed to free hate or sinat chinam. And I think that we got our point across. Of course, we didn't convince everyone, neither Jews nor Arabs, and there's going to be more conflict.
Again, though, Moshe, as I mentioned, we're hearing condemnations from the Gaza rocket, or for the Gaza rockets and the incendiary devices that have targeted civilian communities. We are hearing condemnations internationally, but it's also coming with equivocations from the international community, including from both the UN and from Washington, as we mentioned, in which officials are calling on all sides to de-escalate. Is this a fair response? Because it sounds like Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad are being given a sort of moral equivalence to the IDF.
Well, like I said, it's not a contest, and therefore all sides should be encouraged to hold back as best they can. If we look back, I don't think any of our previous incursions, including land incursions into Gaza, either stopped this, obviously, because we're having more missiles. They're not delaying it. In fact, we just saw the largest barrage of missiles ever. So apparently that strategy isn't working. So I think that we should actually take the advice of the international community. I don't think we even need them to advise us. We should understand that by now, after 54 years of this situation, it's in our hands. We can actually make the difference. And yes, if necessary, the previous governments have negotiated with Hamas, and that's what we should be doing now. It's not a matter of pride. Pride won't bring those two people back. Pride won't bring back the boys who are still in Gaza as of the last war that we had. We have to think about all of these people. I think that provocations, threats, violence, and retaliations will only lead to more of the same. They're not going to actually stop anything, either missile attacks or whatever. So I believe that peace is possible, and it's the only way, and we should be moving in that direction as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, Daniel, I want to get your response, especially in the back of now President Rivlin actually responding to the international community, specifically to the EU, saying no country in the world would accept a similar situation. We'll never accept this reality and will defend our citizens. And he also mentions that, quote unquote, Palestinian extremists have turned the Temple Mount into a cache of weapons and a base for attacks. So with all that in mind, again, how would you respond?
Yeah, and it's important to remember that President Rivlin is a left-leaning politician and by no means a hawk. Look, I agree with Moshe in the sense that, that we should be as restrained as we possibly can, but let's remember, after hundreds of attacks, incendiary devices, explosive devices, and rocks against police on the Temple Mount, the total number of deaths of Palestinians in Jerusalem has come to a grand total of 0. That is an astonishing level of restraint. And to say that Israel has been anything less than inhumanly restrained, I think is unfair to the young men and women in uniform who are risking their lives with enormous restraint. The response in Gaza has also been tremendously restrained. The number of casualties, given the number of sorties Israel has had, is extremely low, and many of them are the result it's still being confirmed. It appears many are the result of own goals, of Hamas rockets that landed back in Gaza. So, of course, we want to find a way to peace. But to say that we aren't making an effort to do that, I think it is terribly unfair. And if we have the time, do we have a moment? I'd like to point out something that everyone's missing about how this started. That the families that were potentially going to be evicted from their homes, they said do we have time for this? They said in an interview on May 4th that they actually understand that Jews were living in those homes before they were. They were there for generations. Jews were there for more generations. They feel that pain. Jews feel that pain. They wanted to reach a compromise. The Palestinian Authority threatened them with physical violence if they would dare to reach a compromise and turn them into political pawns. We have Palestinian governments and terror groups trying to prevent peace among people who already want it.
All right, well, more on that in a moment, because we've heard a lot about the factors that have contributed to this latest round of violence. Among them, some point to the controversial evictions planned for Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem, while others have pointed to alleged Israeli and Jewish encroachments on the Temple Mount, atop which the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound was built. Jordanian Waqf official Sheikh Abdul Azim Salhab, for one, accusing Israel of wanting to Judaize Israel. Judaize Jerusalem especially, but few outside of Israel are pointing to ongoing Palestinian incitements compounded by the annual Iran-initiated Quds Day. The following are Quds Day remarks made by Hamas Politburo member and former Minister of Interior Fatih Hamad, as translated by MEMRI, the Middle East Media Research Institute.
امعطوا رقاب اليهود كلها هي تقف على العرق من هان 5 شيكل تشتري لك سكينه واضيه مضيها وهنا على طول حزه 5 شيكل 5 شيكل انك تذل دوله الكافر لا تجدن اشد الناس عداوه للذين امنوا اليهود والذين اشركوا لقد افسد اليهود لقد تغطرس اليهود وآن الان حسابهم.
So how much of this recent uptick in violence truly stems from issues in Jerusalem, as opposed to external sources, that is to say Iran and its proxies like Hamas and Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, etc., simply using Jerusalem and the Palestinians as a pretext to incite attacks on Israel? Returning now to discuss, I'm here again with CEO of Honest Reporting, Daniel Pomerantz, and via Zoom, political and peace activist Moshe Chertoff. Moshe, again, we'll start with you, your perspective on what we just heard and my questions that I posed.
I don't think anybody in their right mind would be in favor of incitement to violence. At least they shouldn't be. And that is true on both sides. And it's not just a matter of Palestinian extremists that are fueling the fire here. I don't think, or it's obvious to me, that the whole situation did not start in Sheikh Jarrah. We have to go back and understand that people in Sheikh Jarrah and other villages, not neighborhoods of Jerusalem, villages like Silwan and others, have been living in a situation for 54 years where they were annexed into the Jerusalem municipality, but not given Israeli citizenship. So when it comes to them having a voice as to who should influence, for instance, the current situation in our government, they don't have a voice. They can't vote for who they think would be the right people to actually stop the violence on all sides. So first of all, let me go back and just mention, relating to what Daniel said previously, President Rivlin is not left. And it's ridiculous to even insinuate that he's anywhere near left. He has so far been a very neutral president, trying not to lean in any direction, but yes, making decisions in both directions. He's not a leftist, so I have no suspicion of his desires or his intents. There has been incitement, and in fact, I heard it yesterday when I walked through the streets of the old city. I've heard it from Jews for the most part. I did hear it only once from any Palestinians, and that was only because they hadn't stopped and understood why we were handing out flowers. And they were angry, and I understand their anger. And I also understand that although many homes in Sheikh Jarrah and also in Silwan in particular belonged in the past to Jewish families, that doesn't mean that I have the right now to just go in and take it back or go through the court process to take it back. We have to understand that these are people, for the most part, in Sheikh Jarrah, who were expelled or left Israel back in 1948, and now they're being expelled again. I don't think any of us would be going along with that. And as to the Gaza response, I'm very proud of Mordechai Analevich and the people who fought in the Warsaw Ghetto when we were being held back. And I'm not making any equivalence here, but I don't believe that anyone who is being treated unfairly, undemocratically, inhumanely should be limited to just being nice for 54 years. I'm not saying they should react violently in any way, but I don't know what we can expect of them.
Daniel?
And I think that if we get into negotiations, we should eventually end the naval blockade of Gaza and open up to the people of Gaza, having some hope for the future, and that might release some of the tension that's there.
So Moshe, I'm going to turn now to Daniel. Your response?
Well, let's correct some facts here. Everybody in Jerusalem has been offered citizenship. Some Palestinians in Jerusalem chose to refuse citizenship as a sign of protest against Israel's existence, or at least Israel's existence in Jerusalem. If they don't have a voice after having been offered and refused citizenship, that's a choice they made, and it's still a choice that they can unmake and claim citizenship now when they want it. But they've chosen not to. Now, look, people are suffering. There's no question about that. Palestinians are suffering. They're being brutalized by Hamas, by the Palestinian Authority, and that has to stop. And the world has to stand up and say, Hamas is on the terror lists of almost every country in the Western world.
Is Israel exacerbating that, though?
Is Israel making the situation worse for Palestinians living under Hamas and the Palestinian Authority? I'm trying to imagine how. Life under those organizations is pretty bad as it is. It's painful, it's angering. Can Israel do something to alleviate it? I would certainly hope so. But to say that Israel has the ability to make life better for people who live under their own government, it just is not logical or sensible.
All right. Moshe Chertoff, thank you again for being with us, and Daniel Pomerantz, thank you as well.